Welcome back. It is episode 7 here at the Find Me in Seattle podcast. Thank you everyone for joining me here on the podcast or here on YouTube. Anywhere you're listening, I thank you very much. It is the first week of 2020, a brand new decade, a brand new year. Everyone's caught up in like what happened this entire decade. And to start it off, I've kind of come to the conclusion that 2020 is going to be the decade that I always remember that we got addicted to our cell phones. All right, this was the evolution of social media, and the iPhone really started hitting its stride. I think the iPhone 4 came out in like 2012, and this is where we took these devices and we became addicted to them. I think if we look at human history in 100 years from now, they'll talk about the Industrial Revolution 100 years from 2020, but 100 years, if we're talking about 2120, they're going to say this was the decade that we got addicted to devices and we started carrying around this little microcomputer in our pockets and we are addicted to them. And I'm very curious about how electronics are going to be tied to the story of human history and all the places that we're going, because this is the decade that we definitely got addicted to our devices. And so welcome to 2020. For those of you watching here on video, I'm trying to play around with the lights. Hopefully my camera and my lights don't fall over. It's the first time recording this episode in the dark, and normally I have all this natural light coming through the window, but I don't today. So I'm staring at this bright light if you're looking at me here on YouTube. But I want to start off here with a little story about what happened to me on New Year's Eve, because it's silly. So recently I got a brand new drone. I got the Mavic Mini. It's kind of the low end of the market when it comes to drone, and specifically from DJI. And it was it was funny. If you're looking for some drone shots, I just released this video on YouTube. Go check it out. It's about me and my time over the holidays in Sandpoint. And I flew over and flew up on the mountain, and it was great. And so I got back home, and it was New Year's Eve here in Seattle. And I live across the street from the Space Needle, but I can't see the Space Needle anymore from my apartment. So the plan was that we were just, 10 minutes before midnight, we were going to go out and watch the fireworks from the Space Needle and the light show. And this year the winds were too high, so they canceled all the fireworks show. I think T-Mobile invested like $2 million to shoot these fireworks off, and it didn't happen. So instead we're going to watch the light show, because it was the only place you get the music from our neighbor's apartment. And I got the great idea to, why not fly my drone? I'll launch it up above my building and I'll be able to film the whole light show, from like 100 feet above the sky over the building so I could see it. And I was like, I'll launch it right from their balcony and it'll be no problem. And I don't know why I didn't think like, oh, there's 30 miles an hour wind. Your drone is only 249 grams. That's probably not going to go very well. But I didn't think that. I was like, let's try to get this shot. And so it's like 11:50 at night on New Year's Eve, and I'm unpacking the drone, I'm syncing it up to my phone, I'm plugging it in, I'm getting ready to go, and I go out on the balcony, which is a pretty narrow, like single door balcony, and I take it off, and it lifts up, and while I'm under the cover of the balcony, it's totally fine. But the second I put it above the ground floor, like the wall, the retaining wall that was blocking the wind just swept up my drone and flew it, 10 yards past where I was standing. And I'm on the second story, so I'm not directly on the ground there either. And another mistake that I'm just inexperienced flying my drone is I didn't orient or really think about like which way is my drone facing. Because if your drone is facing towards you, the camera's facing towards you, all the controls are backwards, right? Because it's intended to fly forward. And so immediately I'm like, oh no, and I'm trying to catch it, and I'm definitely flying it the wrong direction. I couldn't really orient like which way was forward related to up and down. And so I'm flying, the drone's going all over the place in the wind. It comes towards me and it hits the wall of the apartment, like bounces off the wall 3 times. The propellers are hitting it. I'm just like, oh no, I'm gonna destroy my drone here on New Year's Eve. And at this time it's 11:55 at night. I'm doing this way too late. And so I get control of it. I totally thought the drone was going to fall on the below patio or go on someone else's apartment or something like that. But I get control of it in the wind, and immediately I just like land it in the grass outside the apartment on the side street that's out there. And I pushed the auto land button because I was just like, just land wherever you can, just go down. And for some reason it like wouldn't stop. So it's like dragging along the grass, like almost hitting a tree. And so I almost ran away to go pick it up because I thought it landed, but it hadn't land. So I had to go and hold down the trigger, and I got it to finally land on the grass right outside. It's like 11:58 this moment, and Amanda's like, you need to go get the drone, like if someone sees it, like someone's gonna steal it, right? And so I run out of the apartment, and when I say run, I mildly walked out of the apartment and down, and didn't really like put the connection that it was going to be a countdown in New Year's Eve. And so yeah, I get out, it's like 11:59, I'm grabbing the drone, and Amanda's like, you're gonna miss the countdown, you're gonna miss the countdown. So I spent the 10-9-8 portion of New Year's, the last seconds of the decade, running back to this apartment with the drone in my hands. I could like hear every single apartment that I was going through, like doing the countdown and everything, and I missed the countdown. And so my fiance probably wasn't the happiest that I missed that, but it's okay. She forgave me on there. She likes to say that I walked out on her in 2019 and I walked back in on her in 2020. And yeah, that was just a silly moment. Probably a really dumb decision. I won't do that next time, especially if it's extremely windy. But these are some of the lessons that you have when you get a drone, because I'm still trying to figure out about flying it and how to shoot the video, and I learned a lesson about flying it in the wind. How about I don't fly it in the wind? That's the best thing. So I've been thinking about 2019 and just like wondering like what were the highs, what were the lows, and I wanted to give you guys some of the highlights of my year and just some of the things I went through. And so I was going through my phone and am looking at my calendar and looking at my history of photos, because since I take pictures of everything, it really, not only for these moments, continues to inspire me to take more photos of everything I'm doing, because it's nice to go back and look at these memories, but it's just like a refresher. So I got the new iPhone this year, right in the fall, right? I think I got it on the first day it came out. And I had an issue with the iCloud transfer of all my contacts and all the photos in that transfer. And so I've actually lost like 3 months of content, videos, photos, contacts that I made in that time. And it was so disappointing to go through all my photo history and jump from like, oh, I got May, here's Cinco de Mayo, and then jumping all the way until September. And in that time, I took a trip with my family to actually combine both my new family and my name family into Florida, and I had a great trip. I lost all those photos. My meal of the year, which I'm going to talk about here at the end of the show, is something that I lost as well. But going through my calendar, here are the top things that I remember from this year. The very beginning of 2019 started with this partnership I did with Getaround. Getaround is a car sharing company based out of California, and it's like Airbnb for your car. So you can pretty much rent some random stranger's car and use it for an hour or for a weekend. And they obviously charge you just like a rental car company, but they've got insurance, and it's just a little bit easier to pick up and drop it off. There's not all the paperwork, and you can unlock all the cars from your phone. I did this partnership with them, and I rented a car and drove down to Portland. You can obviously check that. It's my #1 video on YouTube, and that was like one of the first big brand partnerships that I did, where I was creating a video for them to sponsor them. And that actually turned into another video that I did later in the winter of 2019, and that was a partnership with Getaround, but also a local news company here called the Evergrey. Shout out to the Evergrey. You guys help me a lot with the topics that I talk about here. And that was a trip to Leavenworth, where I met all these different business owners that they set up, and people related to Leavenworth, and got to interview them and really do like the Anthony Bourdain thing, like rent a car, drive to Leavenworth, meet all these business owners, eat all this food, do all these fun things, and then the Evergrey edited all these videos for me. And so that was just like a big highlight. Those are the things that I want to do more of this year, is just continue making new partnerships and make really cool videos about unique places and businesses, and how can I kind of bring those together. Another thing that happened here in 2019, for an entire year between 2018 and 19, I had this partnership with Moto Yoga in Green Lake, and they are fantastic. And what I did with them is, in exchange for unlimited monthly membership, I did an Instagram takeover for them every single Tuesday, and I went far above and beyond the commitment of doing an Instagram takeover. Every week I was doing like an edited video in the tall portrait format. It was anywhere from like 1 to 3 minutes. And it was just talk about, I couldn't take my phone into the actual studio for class. So it was just all about like everything they had to offer. Or I did like a yoga tip of the week. I tried all these different things, and I did it for a year, and it's fantastic, and it got me into yoga and really pushed me to exercise, which led me towards the end of 2019 when that partnership ended, and I stopped going to yoga. I had to find this new spot, and then I was speaking on a panel, and this guy, Mitch, comes up and starts talking with me because he was there watching the panel, and he got me interested in the Studio 3, which is a studio here in Lower Queen Anne by where I live, which is absolutely fantastic. I got to make some more content about what they're doing there. And yeah, I really think I've been the most physically fit that I've ever been, at least since I graduated college. Even in college, I wasn't very fit either. But yeah, that's kind of leading here into 2012, is just continue to be active. I walk around a ton, so I am quite active already, but eating all this food is getting to me. So I'm just trying to sweat significantly 3 times a week, and hopefully that can lead to a little bit of balance of a lot of these food adventures that I go on. Another video that I made towards the beginning of the year, I think this was in February, March, was I went to White Swan Public House in South Lake Union, and they had this huge event. It was called Sea Feast, and Sea Feast is an epic meal. I think there was like 8 different courses, included crab, lobster, a ton of mussels, 2 full rockfish. It was just an incredible meal, and it is up there for meal of the year that I had. It was just absolutely fantastic. We were there for like 10 people. I think this meal is going to run you like $750 as a group, but if you get 10 people at $75 each, I think it's totally worth it. We were there for a couple hours. It is a ton of food, kind of overwhelming amount of food, and that was just fantastic. I was looking through my videos and was like, wow, I can't believe that was 2019. It seemed like so long ago. I shot that video, and I don't think I actually delivered the video until August after shooting it in February. But I need to give a shout out. In February, there was also Snowpocalypse, which I wish we had Snowpocalypse every year. I'm really hoping we get some snow, because it just changed the dynamic. Obviously, it's a lot of, becomes free time for a lot of people because the city shuts down. But that was a very memorable highlight of my 2019. Something business-wise that I did this year, I actually put a proposal out to a company, and I said to do all of this work on a monthly basis, it's going to be $5,000 a month. And I remember submitting it and just going like, there's no way they're going to say yes. And of course, they did not say yes. I actually got rejected pretty much immediately, and they didn't even come back with like a counter offer or an ask for less. I mean, they wanted, or what I put in the proposal is I put like weekly podcast, weekly YouTube video, plus the podcast video, and managing their Facebook and Instagram pages, Twitter page, I mean, all social media for them. And so that's creating a lot of content. I mean, that's a full-time job to go and do that. And so I submitted a $5K a month, and they're immediately like, that's way out of our price range. And this was after I had sit-down meetings with them, I think twice. And they said no, immediately, didn't even come back to the negotiation board. I don't even know who they ended up hiring or taking or doing for that, but that was one of the funny lessons that I learned this year in just creating proposals and pitching to different companies. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and that was one of the ones where it's like, all right, maybe I can't be charging $5K a month, or maybe I shouldn't just be offering to do that much work. I'm still developing that in how I pitch my company every week. Another highlight, I carved a pumpkin this year. The last time, I can't remember the last time I actually carved a pumpkin. I know in like 2011, 2012, when I first moved here to Seattle, my friend Kristen, shout out to you, Kristen, she was up visiting, and we all carved pumpkins, but I didn't actually carve a pumpkin that day. I remember she actually carved, I used to have this brand called Seattle Tea Time, and we had this little like teapot logo, and she carved that teapot logo into a pumpkin, and I was like, that's freaking cool. But I just sat there and watched and socialized with everyone. I didn't actually carve a pumpkin. So this year we went to the pumpkin patch and we carved pumpkins, and it really got me into the holiday spirit. I think this is going to be something that we do every year because it was just fun and creative and entertaining and good for us to like hang out and go on a little adventure out to Bothell and have some more fun. Another fun partnership that I did this year was back in April. I chipped my tooth. I was down in California. I was best man in a wedding. The wedding's on Saturday. On Friday, when I'm driving to the venue, I stopped for lunch and I chipped my tooth. And it was a holiday weekend, so none of the dentists were open. So I was best man in a wedding with my front tooth just completely chipped. I don't think many people noticed it too bad, but it drove me crazy for the whole time I was there. I was so self-conscious of it. But it turned into a really interesting opportunity because Dr. Ben Choi of Cornerstone Dental reached out to me and wanted to do a partnership to help fix my tooth and have me document it, which was just like so unexpected. And I am terrified of the dentist. So it was a really good opportunity for me to convince myself to go get this dental work because I was actually going to create some content and create a video that took me on that journey and talked about it and documented that process of fixing my tooth. And so it turned something that I was really terrified into something good. And now shout out to Dr. Choi there at Cornerstone Dental. If you guys need a dentist, make sure you hit him up. He's in Kirkland and he's in downtown Seattle. So I got everybody covered there. The last highlight that I got here, I was in Florida in August. Like I mentioned earlier with my family, I went to Kennedy Space Station. It's a museum that documents kind of the history of NASA. And I had very, very low expectations, and it became one of the coolest things that I've ever seen, but maybe the best museum I've ever been to. Just to see the launch sites where they launched all the moon landers and all the moon missions, and see what they're doing there with Blue Origin and SpaceX and talking about going to Mars. It was just super cool. Far exceeded my expectations. If you're ever down there in like the central Florida East Coast area, go check out Kennedy Space Station. All right, so yeah, those are my highlights for 2019. I'm sure I have more memories, but I don't want to talk your ear off, and we're already here at 17 minutes. This year, I think I produced over 75 different videos. That's from long to short. Some of those were stock videos. Some I made on my phone. Some I made on my camera. Most of those videos were all for my clients. A handful of those were for me here and Find Me in Seattle. My goal is to try to shift that a little bit. I want to get way more Find Me in Seattle videos. I want to have a video coming out weekly, alternating here with the podcast, so you get all those there. And that's really my biggest goal here in 2020. I think what I learned in 2019 with what I want out of my business is, in the beginning of last year, it was all about like building the consulting services side of the agency, right? I want to get more clients. I want to hire on people. I want to be servicing and helping businesses. But I realized that's maybe not the business that I want to build. I'm so much more excited about building the brand of Find Me in Seattle and the opportunity that comes with that, and telling stories, and then have consulting be a monetization strategy of the brand. So I can go in and consult. I can help businesses. I can do public speaking gigs, which I have one coming up here this month. I can also do sponsored videos, which has started to happen with having restaurants actually pay to have me come in and make a Find Me in Seattle branded video. It's about me coming in and enjoying the business and kind of telling my truth and sharing some of the intricacies of that business. And then I take part of that budget and actually apply it to ads on Facebook and Google and Instagram, so we get some further exposure. And that's really my big goal of 2020 is I want to keep these consulting gigs. I want to expand on speaking engagements, hopefully paid speaking engagements. And then I really want to up the monetization of the content in a way that's not interfering, right? I'd love to get a local sponsor here for this podcast, right? I think it'd be so cool if the podcast was brought to you by Fremont Brewing, something here local in Seattle. That could be a monthly basis, a weekly basis. And then as it evolves to interviews, doing longer form content and kind of evolving that side, and then having the sponsored videos where local businesses or people pay and invite me into their business, and I kind of give them an honest review and theatrical version of what that experience was like. So hopefully I can accomplish those goals here in 2020. I think we're off to a pretty good start. I've got a few paid videos, which I'm really excited about. I'm also going down to Portland for a day to speak at a conference, which is accompanied by a video. And so that's a very interesting experience. And 2019 started with that Getaround partnership, and 2020 is going to be talking about this one. I'll share further after I'm done with that. I don't want to spoil too much of what's going on there. Maybe I should do it first. And then lastly, 2020, I'm getting married. So in March, I'm going to be in Bangkok. We are going to be changing over. It's going to be Find Me in Bangkok for that month. And I've got a bunch of content planned on there. I'll still be doing the podcast and be getting everything out. So I'm not going anywhere, but I will be on the other side of the world for maybe one of the biggest moments of my entire life. And so getting here towards the end, I got one last thing that I want to shout out. I wanted to do the meal of the year. So my meal of 2019 goes to, drum roll. I wonder if I can add drum roll here. Maybe you guys can hear me. I don't know. But my meal of the year comes from the Ravenna neighborhood at a sushi restaurant called Wataru. Wataru is a tiny little space, and the primary use of the restaurant is it's a sushi tasting menu. So the chef, who's a disciple of Shiro Kashiba, who's probably the most famous sushi chef in Seattle, who also is apprentice of the famous Shiro from Shiro Dreams of Sushi. So it's apprentice of Jiro. And he has this table that sits up high at the sushi bar, and there's only 6 seats. And then there's like maybe 5 or 6 small tables out in the restaurant. But in those 6 seats, there's 2 seatings a night, and that's the tasting menu. And so chef serves each seat individually with, I think our course, it was like 18 courses, different bites of sushi. And we were there for about 3 hours. And throughout the conversation, I mean, the special moment that came out in the dinner at Wataru was we were talking with one of the guys with us. His name is Travis, and being the baker, Natalie, thank you very much for setting this up for us. They were talking about being in Japan and trying blowfish. And so we're having this conversation about, I believe it's illegal to bring blowfish in, but he had some type of fin, or at least he told us it was a blowfish fin. And while having that conversation, he dropped these fins into a hot sake, and he like let it boil, not boil, but steep in the sake. And then maybe like 45 minutes later, he says the next course, and he gives us this cup, and he's like, after we had the discussion about blowfish, I pulled out these fins and I've been brewing it in the sake. So here's this blowfish fin sake that we had, which was just kind of like one of those like, oh my gosh, moments of the experience that we're having, because we're having this dialogue, and he has a menu in mind, and he serves something every day, but he has so much flexibility because he's serving you course by course. And yeah, he just switched it up and made something different for us and threw that in there. And that was the uniqueness of that meal. It was all this unique sushi that had a story. Every single bite that we had was detailed by the chef the whole time. And it was just an absolutely incredible experience. I think it's probably going to cost you like $125 to $150 per person over the course of 3 hours. But if you have like a really big moment, whether that's a birthday or an anniversary or some graduation coming up, you have to make your reservation. If you want all 6 seats, you got to look like 6 months out to get them. It's that high in demand. If there's only 2 of you, you can probably get it in the next month or so. But if you got something going, especially if you can get 6 people to pay that money, it was the coolest dining experience I had all year. And I had a lot of I could do a top 10 dining experiences. With the top 10, I need to give an honorable mention to maybe the most fun video that I made this year was hanging out with Justin, Anna, and Ace, and we took leftover Dick's cheeseburgers and we put them in a waffle iron to make what we called the Dick's waffle. And it was just unique. We saw someone do it on Twitter. We had to do it for ourselves. Been called out a few times because I guess some people did it with McDonald's cheeseburgers, but it's like, I didn't say I'm the one who invented this. But that deserves an honorable mention because it was just so fun to take these cheeseburgers that I'm not like super hyped about, but we put them in the waffle iron and made the bun super crunchy, with those grid lines in it, and I think it made the burger so much better. I know on Facebook, that's by far my most popular video. I think I just passed 20,000 views on that video. So if you're curious about the Dick's Waffle, you can check that out on all my social channels. That was so fun, and deserves a shout out here. But that concludes the first episode of 2020. This is episode 7 of the Find Me in Seattle podcast. Thank you very much everywhere you're listening. I'm your host, Connor Cayson. You can reach me anywhere on the internet at Find Me in Seattle. Visit my website, findmeinseattle.com. If you have a question, shoot me a tweet, Instagram DM, whatever it is, however you like to reach me. If you're listening on iTunes or Stitcher or Anchor, make sure, please, go to the bottom and hit those 5 stars, because those reviews are probably the best way to support me on this podcast, because that'll help me rank. The hope is that I can get at least the word Find Me in Seattle searched on iTunes and I'm the first thing that shows up. The big goal is to just have the word Seattle, search the word Seattle and me show up as your go-to local podcast. That's kind of the goal here of this entire show. But thank you very much for listening, for following along, for supporting all of my ridiculousness here at Find Me in Seattle. You guys are the best. I hope you have a wonderful start to the brand new year. It's going to be Monday, and I know on January 6th, that's like when everyone goes back to work and the holidays and vacation are completely over. And so I'm sure coming on Monday, people are going to be a little bit sadder than they have been lately coming off vacation. But I hope you have the best freaking week ever. Thank you again for listening to this. I'll see you next Friday for episode 8.